Fantasy Ballers 2.0. What's going on? I'd like to welcome you guys to the Week 2 edition of the Fantasy Flex. Let's get up into it. Get into the scoreboards for last week's matchups. Goes a little something like this. You had the New York Knicks last week taking on the New Orleans Hornets. Knicks taking that matchup 1798 to 1424. Leading scorer for the Knicks, Amari Stoudemire with 234 points in last week's matchup. Leading scorer for the Hornets, Steven Jackson, 195 points throughout the week last week. Matchup number 2 went up between the Lakers and the Cavaliers. This is a Cavalier team that put up the most points last week, so shout outs to my brother. 1955 to 1610. Why 1900 or 1955? This is a Cleveland Cavalier team, folks, where LeBron James has stayed. That's right. The manager kept him, and he's still there. Leading scorer for the Lakers, Pau Gasol, 234 points. Leading scorer for the Cavaliers, Michael Beasley, 256 points on the week. Sorry for the stuttering. Next matchup went between the Jazz and the Suns. The Suns taking this matchup here, 1847 to 1471. Leading scorer for the Jazz, of course, Darren Williams. You already know. 256 points, regulating throughout last week's matchup. Leading scorer for the Phoenix Suns, Zach Randolph, 222 points. So triple deuces, way to put up the points. And we move on up to matchup number 4, which went up between the Magic and the Heat. So the battle for Florida went to the Heat last week. Or excuse me, went to the Magic. Let me correct myself. I gotta find an owner for the Heat too anyway. But fuck the Heat, I'm glad they're losing. The Magic taking this matchup 1698 to 1117. Leading scorer for the Magic, who else but Dwight Howard, 238 points throughout last week's matchup. Leading scorer for the Heat, Manu Ginobili, 223 points. And we move on up to last week's, the last matchup of last week. Excuse me, folks. It's a little bit early. The Atlanta Hawks taking on the Boston Celtics. Celtics taking this matchup here, 1776 to 1584. Leading scorer for the Hawks, Josh Smith, 235 points throughout last week's matchup. Leading scorer for the Celtics, Kevin Love with 356 points. 350, that's just ridiculous. He had that 30-30 game. You already know. You've already heard about it. I'm sure you've seen it on the highlights. And let's get up into the preview of this week's matchups. Week number 3, folks. As we go into, we see here we got the 1-1 Knicks taking on the 0-2 Heat. I gotta find an owner for that team, like I've been saying. I don't like to play dead teams. I don't like getting cheap wins. Matchup number 2 goes up between the 2-0 Celtics taking on the 1-1 Cleveland Cavaliers plus LeBron James. Matchup number 3 puts on the 2-0 Phoenix Suns up against the 0-2 Lakers. In real life, they actually beat the Lakers the other day. So let's see how Mr. Woody can do this week. Mr. Woodrow seeking for his first win on the year, and he's going to have to do it up against a very tough competitor. I know, I just faced him. He just kicked my ass. So shout outs to Mike on that. Utah Jazz with their 1-1 record taking on the New Orleans Hornets. They're also seeking their first win on the year. The Jazz are also a very active team, so Mr. Barry has a very tough quest going up against them this week. Last matchup of the week, folks, puts 2 heavyweights in the fantasy world as far as baseball and basketball. We will see, and football too. I got Tony in my football leagues. Very tough, active dude. 1-1 for the Hawks, 2-0 for the Magic. As you know, the Magic were the runner-ups to last week's, you know what I'm saying, or last year's championship. And let's see. I mean, yo, Mr. DeMilo is a killer in fantasy basketball. So shout-outs to the Magic. And let's get up into the divisions. The East Division right now being headed by 2 teams. It's being headed by the Celtics, who are 2-0, and the Magic, who are also 2-0. Then you got 2 teams that are one game back. You got, with 1-1 records, the Hawks and the Cavaliers. And the 0-2 team in that division will be the Miami Heat, sitting 2 games back in the East Division. We move on over to the West side. That's going to be headed right now by the, looks like that's being headed by the Phoenix Suns solely, 2-0. Then you got 2 teams that are 1 game back, the New York Knicks and the Utah Jazz, 1-1. Why the Knicks inside the West Division? Well, when I took over this league last year, folks, I filled in, I think it was for the Spurs. As a Knicks fan, I hated the Spurs. That was the only team open, but I don't even remember the guy's name, but He hooked me up and let me be the Knicks. He didn't really care. It was draft time. However, make a long story short, that's where we're at. I'm not changing the name. Let's move on up. Last two 0-2 teams in the division. That's going to be the Lakers and the Hornets. Both 0-2, both 2 games back. And we move on up now to our league leaders. Our league leaders right now going throughout the league so far. Looks like in field goals made, that's going to the Utah Jazz. 676 field goals made so far. So he's plus 10 on the next guy, which would be the Phoenix Suns with 667. Free throws made, that's going to the Phoenix Suns. 416. Got a comfortable margin on the Orlando Magic with his 385. 3-pointers made, that's going to the Jazz. 119. Plus 15 up on the Lakers, who've got 104. Offensive rebounds is going to the New York Knicks, 227. Plus 40 up on the Suns, who got 188. Defensive rebounds is going to the Suns, however, who's got 551, so breaking the 550 mark. Plus 40 on the Celtics, who got 511. Rebounds as a whole is going to the Phoenix Suns, holding down that category by 3. The next team behind them will be myself, the Knicks, with 736. He holds it down with 739. Assist is going to the Utah Jazz with 446, holding down that category by 2 assists. The next team behind them will be the Cavaliers. Steals, you got 2 teams tied in the steals department with 145 steals each. That's going to the Magic and the Cavaliers. Blocks, that's going to the Atlanta Hawks. Team is beasting this year. He's got that category by 3 over the Hornets. Turnovers is going to the Cavaliers. They were up there with assists. Normally that goes hand in hand. Let me see. He's got 257 assists. The team with the least amount of, turnovers, 257. The team with the least amount of turnovers is the Heat, who've got 186. That's the team I got to replace, like I said. Double-doubles. Team with the most double-doubles by 2 right now will be the Celtics, who've got 28. The Suns are right behind them with 26 double-doubles on the year. Triple-doubles. The Lakers are the team right now with sole possession of that category. He's got 2 double-doubles. Then you got 4 teams tied with 1. And as far as points scored on the actual basketball court, the team that's got the most points right now will be the the Phoenix Suns, holding it down with 1,842 points. So by the way it's looking, he's going to be the first guy to crack 2,000. Team with the least amount will be the Heat, who's got 1,292. And as far as fantasy points, team with the most fantasy points right now is the Phoenix Suns, so shout outs to Mike in that category as well. He's got 5,456 fantasy points, pretty comfortable lead over the guy in second place, which would be myself with 5,190. And the team with the least amount, again, the Heat. So I've already sent Mr. Morosco a few emails. He hasn't responded back, so I'm assuming he's out. He's only put up 3,612 points. And the team with the hardest road so far, meaning the team that's had the most points put up against him, would be the Lakers. That's why he's 0-2. He's had the 2 teams that he's played put up over 5,500 points. 5,521 points. 5,521 put up against him. The team with the easiest road to victory so far has been the Celtics, who have only had 4,079 points put up against him. So that's the way it's been. As far as streaks, you got 3 teams which got 2-game winning streaks. Obviously, the 2-0 teams. Most active team so far has been the Phoenix Suns with 16 moves. Right behind them is the New York Knicks, who've made 9 so far. And the least active team has been the Heat, folks. Like I said, I got to replace this dude. He's only made 0 moves. And as we move on to the Fantasy Flex, this has been the Week 2 edition of the Fantasy Flex. Tune in for next week's edition. I want to thank you guys for keeping it active. I do this thing for y'all. And I just want to thank you guys for tuning in, man. Flex out. See y'all next week.